All right, some tips on choosing the best answer. So, this is a learning guide that will help you in understanding how to better navigate these kinds of questions. So, what the questions look like, again, they're, just like the other, either A, no change, B, C, and D. And you have to choose the one that's the most clear, correct, concise answer. So, this is one of the ones that we were having some struggles with. So, more practice, more practice, more practice. Go over the ideas, and we'll see how we go from there. So, taking a look at it, key rules to remember is grammar first. You've got to look at things like subject verb agreement, like the dogs runs fast. No, the dogs run fast. You runs fast is not how you say it, and so you want to make sure that you are correct with the grammar. Then you want to make sure you keep it parallel, which is something that we've been discussing, that you want to make sure you get it in there, is that it must match the form. So like, she likes running to swim and biking. She likes running, swimming, and biking. And you can tell that they're parallel. It's like parallel lines that run even with each other. You want your sentences to match, so that it runs even with each other. All right. Next one, be concise. The ACT loves having shorter writing. So if you have two answers that seem grammatically correct, the shorter one is usually right. So like when somebody says the reason why is because, the answer is probably more correct if you choose the shorter version, where it just says because. All right. Here's some other ones. Avoid redundancy. Like in an answer where it says she was surprised unexpectedly. Surprised unexpectedly, you would expect unexpected. You wouldn't, if it was expected, it wouldn't be surprised. So as you can see, it would just be straight, she was surprised. Those are the kinds of things you're looking for so that you can choose the best answer. Keep the sentence consistent with the passage. If you say the scientist messed up big time, that's wrong, because you all of a sudden, with scientists, you start talking slang too casual. No, you don't want to do that. The scientist made a critical error. So when you're looking at them, you want to make sure that you take the one that fits with the topic. So it's staying consistent with if it's formal, stay consistent with that. All right, next one, transitions in logic. Pick up the option that makes the flow. So when you say however, that's when you are having a shift in the sentence, like it's going this way, however, we had something new. Or therefore, it's this way, therefore, you've got an answer. So what it's saying there is that you continue the sentence, like it's cause and effect. Or for example, and then you're going to have an illustration of it. So you want to make sure that your transitions follow a logic pattern there. Now, here's a strategy. Read the full sentence. Don't just stop and read. In our section, I think it's going to be bold the way I have it on your handout. Don't just read the bold section. You want to read the entire thing so that you can fit. We hear about this all the time online, where people just take one little quote and then they misrepresent the person. You've got to read the whole thing so you understand what the quote means when you're trying to find the answer. Check for grammar right away, because you can eliminate a couple of the answers immediately if the grammar is wrong. Do all items match? That's the parallel structure. Look for the most concise of the two, the one that's shorter, because if they're both correct, that's what we are talking about before, choose the shorter one. Reread your choice in the sentence. Does it sound natural? Go back over it and see. After you have your choice, decide. Now, make sure you convince yourself, if you're going to change your answer, make sure you're absolutely sure, because that first choice that you make, unless you can absolutely know the reason why it's not that one, you want to stick with it. All right. Now, here's some common trap answers here. When they start getting wordy, like at this point in time, instead of saying now, so you could see that there. Redundant ideas, again, each and every instead of each, when you're saying things that you don't necessarily need to. Let's see, wrong verb, tense, and number. We were talking about that before. You guys were doing pretty good on that one. They instead of they were. Awkward constructions, being that instead of just saying because. Okay. So here's an example. So if we take a look at this to see if we can get the answer down here. It says the hikers carried backpacks filled with water, snacks, and they had a flashlight. So we got to take a look at it. We could be no change. Remember we talked about that's like 20 to 25% of your answers are going to be no change. So the hikers carried backpacks filled with water, snacks, and they had a flashlight. So if we say, and also a flashlight, and let's see, snacks and also a flashlight. All right, so that one's off. How about they carried water, snacks, and a flashlight, plus having a flashlight? Well, let's look at some of those wordy ones, and also a flashlight. So that's kind of repetitive there. They say, and they had a flashlight. Is that no change? Well, let's take a look at the parallel part of it. Filled with water, snacks, and they had a flashlight. They had a is going to be adding more to it. If you narrow it down, you see it now that C and a flashlight fits that parallelism where they just had water, snacks, and a flashlight, not extra stuff in there. So that's where you get with C. Parallel, water, snacks, and a flashlight. Messing with my size on that. You might hear my dogs in the background. They're excited about something. All right. So with all of this, what you're going to do is go back and you're going to practice on a worksheet, and hopefully you have everything you need for parallelism.